Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. I'll be calling the roll. Oh, you want to call the roll? Okay, go right ahead. That's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Jeff Elhoff. Here. Dr. Joel Schroeder. Here. Mr. Justin Smith.
Here.
Mr. John Welch.
Present.
Ms. Diane Nguyen. And you have the floor, Mayor.
Thank you. This evening, we have Mark Polson to lead us in prayer. Good evening.
Good Lord. Father, we thank you so much for this day. Father, we thank you for the warmth of the sun, Father, for the beauty of the sunset. Father, I thank you for the mayor, council members, city administration, and staff for the dedication of time, commitment to this great city. Father, we just pray that you would just bless the meeting tonight. Father, that all the discussions that take place, all the decisions that are made, Father, that you would just grant your discernment. Father, that you would just give them wisdom in all those things. Father, we just want to pray for the city in the same way that Paul prayed for those in Thessalonica. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with all of you. Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you. Please stand and join me in a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, we have 3 proclamations, so bear with me as I read through these, but they're all important. So, first one is Severe Weather Awareness Week, which is citizens of the Bel Aire, Kansas. Greetings. Whereas Severe Weather Awareness Week is March 1st through March 5th, 2021, and whereas Kansas has experienced more federally declared disasters in recent years than any other state in the nation. And whereas each year brings the potential for violent weather to Kansas, and whereas large portions of our state, including the city of Bel Aire, can be devastated by flooding, tornadoes, hail, windstorms, and other potentially dangerous events. And whereas the Governor's Division of Emergency Management, the National Weather Service, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, have joined together urging all citizens to prepare for severe weather and to educate themselves on safe strategies. Therefore, in official recognition of this statewide event, I, Jim Benage, Mayor of the City of Bel Aire, do hereby proclaim March 1st through March 5th, 2021 Severe Weather Awareness Week in Bel Aire. Hand that to the city clerk, please. Second one is Flood Awareness Week. To the citizens of Bel Aire, greetings. Whereas Flood Awareness Week is an opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for and understanding flooding in Kansas and encourage all citizens to better prepare their homes, businesses, and communities for the upcoming flood season. And whereas the Kansas Hazard Mitigation Plan identifies flooding as the costliest type of natural disaster in Kansas in terms of lives lost, injuries, and property damage. And whereas floods threaten people, homes, and other property in every county in Kansas. And whereas floods can happen anytime, anywhere, and without warning. And whereas damage from a flood is not normally covered under a standard homeowner's policy. And whereas this spring will bring seasonal rainfall, which can bring the potential for flooding. And whereas National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration National Weather Service will initiate Severe Weather Awareness Week in Kansas on March 1st. Therefore, I, Jim Benage, Mayor, do hereby proclaim March 1st through March 5th, 2021 as Flood Awareness Week in the city of Bel Aire and call upon all citizens to recognize this observance. And third one is to citizens of Bel Aire, greetings. Whereas March is the American Red Cross Month, a special time to recognize and thank our heroes, those who volunteer, take life-saving courses, to provide financial donations to support an organization whose mission is to help those in need. And whereas we would like to remember those who help us all here in Bel Aire, Kansas, by giving their time and help to their neighbor, and thank our heroes, our volunteers, class takers, and financial supporters who help us assist in those in need. And whereas in the city of Bel Aire, the American Red Cross works tirelessly through its employees and thousands of volunteers to help when disaster strikes, when someone needs life-saving blood or the comfort and a helping hand. It provides 24-hour support to members of the military, veterans, and their families. It has also provided training in CPR, aquatic safety, and first aid. And whereas across the country, the American Red Cross responds to nearly 70,000 disasters a year and provides some 400,000 services to military members, veterans, and civilians, and collects and distributes about 40% of the nation's blood supply, and trains more than 7 million people in first aid, water safety, and other life-saving skills every year. And whereas our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on the donations of time, money, and blood to fulfill its humanitarian mission. Despite these challenging economic times, the American Red Cross continues to offer help and comfort to those in need. Now, therefore, I, Jim Benage, Mayor of the Bel Aire City, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as American Red Cross Month. Do that to the City Clerk, please. Thank you. Next on the agenda is determine the agenda additions. Are there any additions to consider? Hearing none, move on to the consent agenda. It contains the minutes of February 16th City Council meeting, as well as 3 fireworks stand permits. City codes limit stand permits to 4, meaning we only have 1 permit left.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
one question, or maybe 2 questions on the firework permits. First question, I think in the past when we've looked at these, they've been accompanied by insurance because we require an insurance policy for these. I'd just like to confirm that that's been taken care of, just not part of our packet. And the second item is on the first one. I think this is a typo. I think it's intended to be sponsored by Sunrise Christian Academy, not Sunshine Christian Academy. And I'm not sure if that is okay to approve that with the typo or what I'm assuming is a typo on that document.
I'm pretty sure it happened last year, so.
Okay.
They did provide insurance for all the actors.
Okay. Councilmember Smith, the clerk is affirming that is a typo. So the certificate, you're approving generally the application, so we don't need to make an amendment here. The actual certificate will be printed and presented to the correct organization once the fire department does their inspection, if you decide to approve today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Councilman Schroeder. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, a vote carries 5-0. Discussion approval of appropriations ordinance. This report includes the final easement acquisition for Woodlawn expansion, as well as the 53rd Street lift station expenses, which is a very good thing. We're moving along on Woodlawn. We're getting some things done. That's good. Any discussion concerning the appropriations ordinance?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elsoff.
I motion to approve the appropriation ordinance 21-04.
Second?
Got a motion by Mr. Elsoff and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries 5-0. And city requested appearances, we have none. So citizens' concerns. So city clerk, do we have any emails to read?
No, Mayor, we did not receive any.
Thank you. Is there any citizens in the audience who wish to speak to council? Seeing none, we'll move on to council member reports. Start with Ms. Nguyen. Would you like to start with the reports?
Sure. Actually, I have not much of anything to report.
Turn your mic on.
Oh, this one. You moved everything around. And I've still not had the, how do I turn on that? My time has been taken up, as many of you know. My son is very ill and has been back in the hospital and then out of the hospital, which is even worse because there's nobody else watching him. So not much done for the city in the last couple of weeks. I'm sorry to say,
Well, we will keep you and your son in your prayers.
please.
Councilmember Smith.
I did attend the CCUA meeting that occurred, I think it was last Thursday. The most notable item was an offer that was extended to utility manager position there. So we're well on our way, hopefully, to filling that position. I haven't heard any official update there, but I'm optimistic that we're going to have a utility manager for the CCUA. So that's all I've got to share.
Thank you. Dr. Schroeder.
I have no report.
Mr. Elsoff.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Like Councilman Smith, I attended the CCUA last week, Thursday, and I second everything that he said. And I'd just like to add that we had also adopted our 2021 water supply emergency plan and municipal water conservation plans. And things are just moving along there with the path towards the update to the sewage treatment plant. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Welch.
I did some research into brush disposal, but I think we're going to talk about that at the next workshop. Is that correct?
That is on the agenda, correct, Mr. Ty?
Okay, so I will save my information for then, and any citizens that are interested in that should show up for the workshop.
Very good. Thank you. So I will also echo the discussions of Mr. Smith and Mr. Elsoff about the CCUA meeting. I did attend that as well, and we did all those things that they said. Offer was extended. That has not been completed. It is in work. So as soon as that's finalized, and we can talk more about it. The other item, echoing what Mr. Smith and Mr. Elsoff said, plus we also did discuss the timetable for bond financing for the wastewater treatment expansion that's planned to start later this year. So there's a timeline out there. It's not a approved bond, but there will be some bonds issued later. I did also attend the PBC meeting with the council member Schroeder and Mr. Gary O'Neill. We approved the formal contract for offer to purchase what we approved in February 2nd, 2021. This was for about 4.4 acres in Sunflower Commerce Park. So this was really more the formal contract approval of what we previously had already agreed to. You may have heard there was a serious fire this last Saturday night on February 27th here in Bel Aire. Sedgwick County Fire with Wichita Fire, a second alarm, did a great job putting this out in about 2 hours. I understand the duplex is a total loss. So 2 Sedgwick County firefighters were injured. Fortunately, their injuries were not minor. They both went to the hospital. One was treated and released, and the other stayed overnight just as a precaution. I just want to thank all of the firefighters who help protect our people and property. We know that if you are not there on the job, these kinds of issues could become major tragedies for the community. And we truly appreciate your service. I was also invited by Dr. Rob Renstad to attend the Sunrise Christian Academy musical play rendition of Irving Berlin's White Christmas. This was an impressive show with a full, mostly student orchestra, great props, and student actors. Maybe not the level of Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye, but if one did not have them to compare this, one would have thought this was a professional play. It's a great job to the students and staff at Sunrise Christian Academy. Sedgwick County is still on a slow decline in COVID infections at about 3.67% as of yesterday. This is the lowest it's been since June 20th. So that's very good. Of course, we still need to keep vigilant with hand washing and social distancing and wearing masks where social distancing is not possible. And looking over the KDHE data for the experimental vaccines, you can now get this vaccine based upon available supply if you are 65 or older. Kansas has now received just over 805,000 doses, enough to give 2 doses to about 17% of the population. So 12.7% of the Kansans have received at least one 370,000 the first dose, 170. So we continue to see this slowly approaching herd immunity. I did read where Moderna and Pfizer say they expect to deliver 140 million doses this month. That's enough vaccine for over 20% of the U.S. to have 2 doses of the vaccine. So I hope our last minute delivery is up to the task as these become available. So I'll now ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, as you mentioned, the Sedgwick County as numbers are going down, we're still under a health order. We're still required to limit mass gatherings to 100 people. And we have received questions about rec programming. The gym that the sports play in, the rec director is really trying to make sure everybody's distanced appropriately and safe. But the gym that the sports are held in cannot accommodate 100 people 6 feet apart. So I know we've had some questions about why we can't allow 4 spectators per person, because we can't also accommodate the 6 feet apart distance requirement that the county requires. So we're just not able to accommodate that right now. As outdoor sports start, we'll be working on social distancing there, working with Sunrise to make sure that we can accommodate their sports while still maintaining the social distancing as well. So we anticipate that the county is going to revisit this order on March 20th in light of some of the numbers. So there may be some changes there. That'll be the same week of your meeting. So I'll try to bring you information that week so you can know, you can make decisions at that time. That's all I have.
Thank you. And now our city manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You had asked that I share some of the information about high gas prices, natural gas prices. It's been in the news, it's been in the paper, and I'm sure everybody's heard about it and been nervous about if you haven't already gotten your Kansas gas bill. The thing I wanted to explain is that it really isn't going to affect Bel Aire residents and many residents in different cities to the extent that it will in Keachai and Cheney and cities that actually own and operate a natural gas utility. So as we know that cities throughout the U.S. Can operate different types of utilities, and of course, in Bel Aire, we operate our sewer, our sewer and water system. Then we contract with Waste Connections for trash. There are cities that own their own trash trucks and do that themselves. There are cities that generate their own electricity, and there are cities that provide their own natural gas. So what happens in the gas industry is a commodity. And so you have the major players like Kansas Gas, One Oak, different organizations like that provide gas service to communities throughout the U.S. And so those are big companies, and they purchase gas when the prices are low, and they have the capability of storing that. So you may remember, it's probably been 20 years ago, that there were some gas explosions up in Hutch, and that's because there was underground storage there where they would pump gas in to store it. And in that situation in Hutch, it was starting to come out and causing some. But anyway, that's a storage area. And then they also go on, just like a commodity, they buy futures of gas that they can set a price that they're going to buy it. Cities that provide gas don't have that option. They don't have storage capabilities. They don't have the ability to go and buy options and things like that. So they are really at the mercy of the market. And so what happened when this really cold spell hit, obviously Kansas Gas and all the gas companies had a huge hit on their usage. People were needing the gas to heat their homes. So they used that gas for their customers. And then the cities that were providing gas had to go to the market and buy that. And the market was 10, 20, 100 times higher than it was. So when you hear, a typical gas bill for someone maybe in Cheney was $100, now it's $1,000 for that month. And that's because they had no ability to set that price for the year, and the gas prices soared. They had to buy it at that or shut off gas to their citizens. So they bought it. Citizens were using it. And now we've even heard at the state level, the legislature is looking at ways for those cities to address that issue with their citizens, because you can imagine getting $1,000 heating bill. And even school districts and stuff have gotten $25,000 bills and such. So, but as I said, I wanted to let our citizens know that because Bel Aire doesn't provide that, it's Kansas Gas. Our gas probably will be a little bit higher just because the cost of gas goes up, but they have those protections that they store and they buy futures. It's not going to affect us. There are some discussions as well about on the electric side. So as I mentioned, there's cities that produce electricity and they have generators, and a lot of them are gas powered generators. So they're ramping up because of, people are using their furnaces and space heaters and everything. So the need for electricity goes up. They have to use their generators more. The cost of the generator really skyrockets because they're buying gas now at, 100 times what it was. And so electric bills are going to go up. Evergy provides our electricity. And so hopefully our citizens, when they open their bills for electric and gas, don't see much of an impact.
Just higher usage.
Higher usage.
Higher
Yep.
price because of higher bill because of higher usage, not price.
Yep, but it's not going to be, if it was typically $100, it's not going to be $1,000. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. So moving on to ordinance resolutions and final actions. KDHE requires any provider of potable water to maintain a water conservation plan should an emergency or drought hit. The plan must be adopted annually with CCUA, City of Wichita, and KDHE receiving copies. Staff works with the Utility Advisory Committee each year to review the plan and see if any changes need to take place. Our city engineer, Ann Stevens, is here to address any questions. And this does tailor right along with the plan that was approved by CCUA last week. So, thank you.
It's mainly the same plan that you have seen the last several years. What the Utility Advisory Committee does is they look at the usage throughout the most recent year, update those numbers. If anything significant has changed with the operation or the maintenance of the system, they address that. We really didn't have any major changes this year, so it's substantially the same with the exception of the updated numbers, the updated dates, as what you have seen in the past.
Any questions for Ms. Stevens? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 Municipal Water Conservation Plan for for the city of Bel Aire and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Welch and a second from Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. The city maintains 2 dump trucks, of which are very important and become critical during snow and ice removal. The truck needing replaced was purchased in 2000, and repairs are getting costly. So our Public Works Director, Ann Stevens, is here to explain the need and answer any questions about this new International 7400 dump truck.
In 2018, council graciously approved the purchase of a new truck. We have been using that quite a bit. It's worked very well. The second dump truck that we have is the Sterling, and it has been, it's worked very well up until the last year. We have been having a lot of electrical issues with it. If you're familiar at all with cars and car maintenance, electrical issues are very, very difficult to diagnose. So it's been in and out of the shop. We find something and then something else. So we're kind of at our wit's end with this truck. I mean, it still mostly works. We can still run several ways, but the repairs are piling up because it's an electrical issue. Again, hard to diagnose, takes a lot of time and effort on part of the mechanics to get those. Additionally, when we were out with our snow events the past couple of weeks, the plow fell off. Not really sure quite what happened. I believe it's just because there's a lot of salt that is used when as we treat the streets, the salt corrodes the metal and it fell off. So we take very good care of our trucks. Every time we come back, we spray them down as much as possible, clean them off. We did start using a product in the past couple of years to try and help protect, especially the undercarriage of trucks, from the salt and the sand that we use to prevent the rusting. So we're kind of hoping that that is going to help prolong the life of the trucks, but unfortunately the Sterling, it was not, the preventative maintenance as far as the prevention of the rusting hasn't been done in the years preceding. So it's kind of one of those things we're trying to catch up, and you get so far down the road and you don't have a whole lot of, you can't backdate it, make it better. So I'm just trying to prevent it from getting worse.
So one question I do have, are these newer trucks, do they do a better job at protecting the wire harnesses from corrosion, like putting them, encasing them in something or doing anything else to protect them from corrosion? Because obviously a lot of these trucks get used for this purpose, right?
And I do believe that the harnesses that they do have protection for them, the specific sort of protection, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But we are putting the protective coating underneath the truck.
Yeah.
And then using this other additional spray on protection about every time we use it or every other time. So we're doing what we can to try to prevent that, to try to prolong the life.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
So I saw in the staff report, it sounds like we've spent about $10,000 in repairs over the last 5 years. And when I look at that and I compare, an average of $2,000 a year in maintenance to $160,000 replacement truck, boy, that $2,000 a year in maintenance sure looks good. Can you help me understand why we shouldn't just continue to spend the money, even if it's, $10,000 a year on maintenance? Why shouldn't we go that path right now?
For us, it's not so much the dollar figure, it's the hours. Every time that truck is down for an unknown electrical issue, it's down for several days. If we have a critical water main break or another critical event where we need that truck and it's out, then we have to go rent one or do without and make it a lot longer process for a water main repair, for example. Snow removal, that's a very critical piece of equipment. When the snow plow fell off, we weren't really able to use the truck. So it's not so much the dollar figure that's associated with the maintenance, it's the time that it's down.
And these issues that pop up, like from an electrical perspective, are they such that, as we get ready for snow season, we could send the truck in and have somebody kind of go through it and surface them? Or are they the type of issues that just kind of appear randomly, like when you need the truck most?
They're pretty much kind of appear randomly. We do make sure that all of our trucks have the appropriate maintenance as the time, when the time comes, and we do make sure going into the winter season, we give them not only we, but the truck mechanics give them a very thorough once over to make sure that they are prepared. But you can't always predict a snowplow falling off or other miscellaneous electrical issues.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor. I was glad to hear that we've been moving towards maintenance because it seems like rust issues seems like something that could be prevented. So I am glad to hear that we are going to hopefully be able to avoiding that in the future because those two seems like solvable problems. And I also understand the being out problem of equipment that needs to be, the point is you kind of need it right now in the snow. So I think I'm tracking with what you need. I felt the same as Councilman Smith with a little bit of doing the numbers and being initially frustrated, but I think I can track what you're saying.
I would like to add that just the downtime is a critical service factor that is hard to quantify, but when it's not available and you need to move the snow, you don't have an option. You
Correct.
can't go rent a snowplow or truck with snowplow on, can you?
No,
Okay.
not very
I didn't think you could. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
are the two dump trucks the only two trucks that plow our streets, or did we have a larger heavy duty truck that also did that?
we have a total of 5 trucks that we use to plow the streets. The 2 dump trucks are the main ones that plow the main streets. The 3 other ones are lighter duty trucks that we have snow plows and spreaders on a few of them. And those mainly handle like the city hall parking lots and the snow routes, so through neighborhoods. So
Okay.
yes, we do have several others that could be used pressed into service if need be. They're much smaller.
I'm trying to, mentally weigh the chances of the usually reliable but sometimes flaky dump truck breaking down on those few times a year that we really need it to plow the snow, and what mitigations would we have to work around that if that happened, and does that risk warrant $160,000 spend right now is what I'm trying to think about.
Certainly.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Mr. Elsoff.
I was just curious, so per the report, we went out to 3 vendors and only one of the 3 responded. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of, did we provide a sufficient amount of time for a response, or how typical is it that we get just a 1 bid response?
We provided, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks for a response, and that's a fairly typical time period for what we use in going out for different sorts of equipment. I was somewhat surprised that we only had the 1 response, but given the current COVID situation, I hate using that excuse, but you don't know what supply issues and what other issues companies are facing. So we did not, as far as I'm aware of, reach out to those companies and ask why. We can certainly do that. And if there's anything that we can do to encourage others to apply or provide a bid, we can certainly reach out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just did a little research on my own and was just kind of curious where the market price was. It seems like, based on what I discovered, I mean, we're looking at a 2022 model, so it'll be an absolute brand new truck. And I certainly think that I learned based on our purchase from 2018. I remember that. And at the time I was asking, hey, why aren't we going out and buying something used and spending a lot less money? And the education I received going through that process was that, like you mentioned, how when we need a truck, we need it, and we need it to be reliable. And that need and the ability to get the work done, especially in an emergency type situation like you described, that it's worth its money, and we run these trucks hard. So starting with something fresh that we can maintain and know the history, that's a high value aspect to the purchase, because it is a lot of money and it's a concern. But I mean, based on my understanding of all the factors involved here and the need the city has, and just the history that I'm aware of how we use these trucks, and just all those things put together, I got no problem with moving forward with this, even though it's a single bid situation. Like you mentioned, there's unknowns. How much longer should we wait, and all that kind of thing. So, I support moving forward with this. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things I'm most concerned about is if we replace these, I think I could really connect with the need for two of these really reliable dump trucks, right? They're pretty critical to our infrastructure. It just so happens that we just bought a brand new one 2 years ago. And so I suspect that if we buy a brand new one now, that next time we're going to replace them, we're going to be replacing them pretty close together. And I wish that, we could spread those out a little bit more so that it's not spend a bunch of money on two brand new dump trucks, at the same time on that same cycle, a little bit like we do with our other, like our police vehicles. We try to put them on a cadence where it's a regularly kind of scheduled cadence. What would be the impact if this were done like a year from now instead of right now?
The impact would be slower response times. In the winter, for example, it would take us much longer to clear streets because we would only have the one large vehicle to clear the streets with. Assuming this one is kind of continually up and down and you don't know if it's available or not, you can't count on it. In an emergency situation for a water line repair, for instance, currently we use one truck to haul away material and the other truck to bring it in. So they're kind of both running simultaneously. It would just take us a longer period to complete those repairs. So is it doable? Yes, it's just you're extending the time period of any work that we do with those trucks.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, Dr. Schroeder.
So it seems like, I'm tracking with Councilman Smith a little bit, saying like, well, it seems like we don't want to say no, or Councilman Smith doesn't want to say no. We're, in my mind, at least anyway, is wait an appropriate answer. Like, do we wait 6 months and say, no, this truck broke down again? No more of this, or is it a good time to go ahead and do it now? I guess I would be open to saying wait is the answer. I think I'd be against saying definitely no, figure it out, because if it keeps breaking down, it keeps breaking down, and that's not the right answer. But I might be more willing to say, it's a problem. If it continues to be a problem, let's buy a new one. But let's wait a little bit longer and make sure it continues to be that problem if the problems are a bit nebulous. So I've come to a decision yet, but I'm still contemplating.
I think it would be important to keep in mind, I'm not saying it should change your decision, your thought process there, but keep in mind, these aren't not trucks you can get off the lot. These have a 6-month lead time, I think, is what I'm seeing, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And I would also add that we had initially expected this truck to last another 5 to 10 years. And so there's no guarantee that even if the trucks were purchased in 2018 and 2020, that they would come due for replacement at the same time next year, or in the 20 years into the future. One could be, we could have problems develop with one truck and not the other. And so there's, I do respect and I do follow your thinking and acknowledge that. It's not a guarantee it's going to expire on a certain date. So there's always that unknown. But yes, I agree. We generally would like to space out purchases like this as much as possible.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Smith.
A little bit along the lines, I think, of Councilmember Schroeder's thinking, the issues that we've been having from an electrical perspective and the things that we've fixed, has that all been relatively recent? Or do we have a long history of consistent issues with the truck? I'm wondering, did we just have, a bad couple of weeks and so we're kind of done with this dump truck, or is this a long running history of problems with the dump truck?
It's really been within the last year, and it's just kind of been compounding. And so that's just all those issues have have led us to say, it'd be really nice to have a new dump truck. We'd really appreciate this. We're willing to put off other purchases, all of our other purchases this year to get the new truck.
Mr. Mayor? Maybe I could add a little more perspective as well. So the truck we're talking about is 21 years old. And as one of the council members stated that, it's used differently than a pickup truck that we would drive. Of course, it's a diesel. It's got a dump bed on there and all the hydraulics with that, which adds to the expense. A pickup truck that's a 1-ton diesel pickup would run us probably 60, 70,000, just for kind of as an example. So, it seems a lot as a cost, and it is, but then when you compare it to what a truck is, the other struggle we have, and because we've talked about it, is, at what point does it get that the expenses outweigh the purchase of buying something new? And that's kind of where we've talked about now, is we know we've got these costs. We've got the downtime as well. If we wait another year, do all of a sudden we have a $10,000 bill because of something went out, or a computer went out or something? It wasn't just some wiring. And then we're thinking, wow, should we spend $10,000 on this, or should we replace it? And then we're back to, as the mayor said, you can see on this one, if we were to order it today, it won't be here till this fall. So I don't remember if it was August or September when it was supposed to be in, but it's this fall. So if you say, well, let's wait till after the first of the year, next year, it would be in next fall. So the fall of 2022. Or if we got to a situation where, hey, we've got to spend $10,000, do you want to spend $10,000 and then go ahead and purchase one, or do we just let it sit and purchase one? And as the mayor said, we can't just go to the lot and say, hey, we decided we're not going to fix this. Let's buy a new one. We're back to where we're at. The other thing is that it's about $160,000 was budgeted for this year for a sewer vacuum. And so that there is an expense out there, but staff felt that they would rather wait a year on the sewer vacuum for next year and get this replaced this year because of all the reasons we've talked about. So I just wanted to throw out that, if you want to wait on this, we can do that. They'll probably come back though and want to replace the sewer, because as Councilmember Smith said, we've got to get on a better replacement schedule. And, our struggle with, and you all know that, is, a lot of our things are coming due and we finally have some money to repair it. And that's why all of a sudden we've got 3 police cars we got to replace, or, 2 trucks, or 2 dump trucks in 2 years, because we didn't have the money to do that scheduling like we should have, and done a dump truck every 10 years or something like that. So a lot of moving pieces to it.
Mr. Mayor? There's a sense too in which, if you're staying within your budget and, you kind of know what you need, there's a sense of me too that's like, you probably know what you need better than me. And if that's a truck and not a vacuum, maybe I should just, we should just let you go with what you think you need, and you work on it and a day-to-day basis. And since we're, within your budget constraints, I'm probably not going to push back on that too hard ultimately, if that's what you really feel needs to be done with that budgeted money.
I have a question that's a little bit different than everybody else. I know once wiring starts to go bad, it's awful to deal with. I've dealt with it myself. Is it possible to replace the entire wiring harness for $10,000 and get us another few years out of the truck?
I do not have the answer to that, but my guess is it's going to be significantly more than that because of the complexity of the truck with all the snow, with the snow plow, the dump bed, et cetera. But that is something we can look into.
Okay, I wouldn't guess it was that complex a harness compared to some of the cars that are out there today. I thought you might tell me that we couldn't get the part.
Yeah, I do know trucks are the parts for this truck are getting very difficult to find. And so whether it's even possible, I don't know, but I can tell you that it has not been looked into.
That would be the only alternative I'd look at as opposed to buying a totally new truck.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
if you were to go out and find that it was possible and somewhat economical to have the entire wiring harness replaced, maybe it's 10 or 15,000, would that give you the confidence that you needed in the dump truck at that point? I'm assuming that would eliminate the
Sure.
electrical.
Sure, since I am not the one driving the truck on a daily basis, I but I do know that Dave, the Assistant Public Works Director, who is in charge of the day-to-day activities, is very thorough, does his research, and really looks into all options available. If that was an option available, I'm sure he would have looked into it and talked with the mechanic, and we would have approached you with a cost for that.
Can I ask about the snowplow again? Did it break a steel frame or something? What actually happened that it fell off?
I believe it broke a bolt that attached it to the truck.
Okay, so somewhat regular maintenance item then, not like the frame is rusted so bad that we can't hook anything to it.
I think this was, it was not something that was caught in our vehicle inspections prior to the snow events, that we bring them out and do a once over, and look very detailed to make sure, and it was not caught at that point. So I'm guessing it was just, whether it was something internal to the bolt or the part itself,
It could have been totally hidden,
yeah,
okay, but it was a bolt instead of a major part.
I believe that's what it was, yes.
So that does raise an interesting question in my mind, more because of the series of problems of maintenance errors in aircraft and disasters they cause. But do you use a checklist when they're doing the maintenance, or we kind of know what to look at and we look for it?
I believe they use a checklist, yes.
And I don't know if this makes any sense, but if it makes sense, maybe we should add those bolts to that checklist to be checked. Regardless whether you replace this or not, it's just
Right.
something that,
Sure.
bolts rusting, it needs to be replaced before
Yep.
it breaks.
How long is this bid good for?
That is a good question. I'm sure it is good till the next meeting. But, Melissa, do you have that in front of you? Okay,
30
this bid may
days.
not be withdrawn for a period of 30 days.
Yeah, but I didn't know when that began.
This would
Didn't date
have
it.
been submitted the Monday or Tuesday prior, so Monday or Tuesday of last week.
So it's only 7 days old.
Correct.
I might suggest then that we table this and see if there's any kind of like refurbishment we could do to the truck, go replace a bunch of bolts in the wiring harness instead of spending the entire 160,000 right now. And if we can't find a way to do that, we maybe vote on this at the next meeting.
So are you making a motion?
I got myself into that again. I don't know exactly what motion. I guess I could just motion to table the bid, but is that acceptable to you? Do you think you could find something out?
We can certainly check with the mechanic and check with Summit and see if it's even possible. We're more than happy to make some phone calls and see if there is a possibility there and what it might cost.
Okay, well, I guess I'll make a motion to table it and then anybody else can argue about it. I will make a motion to table the bid, Summit Truck Group at a cost not to exceed until the next meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
I'll second that. I like the idea of just confirming whether there's or not. I do understand that this is a critical piece of infrastructure and maybe the most important tool that we have. And I get that we've budgeted money for it. But I'm also looking at the mileage on the truck and thinking, man, it'd sure be nice to get a few more years out of this and push us on the cycle, and maybe also let us get that VAC truck this year, which I think could be a win. I think that suggestion of table for next time makes sense.
Mr. Mayor, I also am fine with the tabling. I think there's a really good chance we come back and buy this next time. And if we do, that's fine, so fine with that as well. So waiting a few weeks, if it doesn't seem like there's any harm to the Public Works Department doing 2 weeks later, I'm okay with, though. If I were a betting man, I would bet we'll approve this next week, because I think there's a pretty good chance we won't be able to do that, but I think it's worth checking into, and I'm thankful Councilman Welch bringing up the option.
Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I guess I'll just add, so, we got 30 days. Let's do our due diligence. I'm fine with that, so.
I'm good.
Okay.
I think tabling it.
Okay. I'll call for a vote to table, called by Mr. Welch and
Need a
seconded
second.
by Mr. Smith.
Oh, did you second it? I'm sorry, I missed that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item is accepting a bid dedication, street and other public ways, services, and utility easements, and for the final plat of Skyview at Lot 49. The developer, Skyview, has completed the preliminary and final plats, submitting them to Planning Commission for review. The Planning Commission reviewed the final plat and conducted a public hearing on February 11th, 2021. And the Planning Commission considered the evidence and found that the plat complied with all provisions and applicable regulations, and voted 4-0 to approve the plat without. The plat with certain dedications comes to the governing body for final approval, and our city engineer is here to answer any questions. If I remember right, did I remember seeing in this report that they added a park to this platting?
Yes,
Okay.
the planning commission felt that there was too many lots without open space, and this location is within our master plan for needing open space and needing a park. So they did request that of the developer, and the developer was agreeable to it, with the caveat that the city own and maintain the park, that park.
So it will be a city-owned and maintained park.
Correct. So it will be
Any-
a public park, similar to
Right.
Denise, probably
So
maybe a little bit smaller than Denise Park.
any improvements to the park would be a city responsibility.
Correct.
Right.
Where on the plat is that park? That lot there? Okay.
And I would like to mention that Mr. Will Clevenger with Garver is also here. He did prepare the plat for both this and the next item.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion concerning this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith?
So on the specifics of the park, if the developer installs improvements in the park, the city is then responsible for maintaining those improvements? Or I guess I'm trying to understand how, if there are planned initial improvements, and what the scope of those are, and what the city signed up for there.
Sure. Will, do you have answers on what the developer, if the developer is planning on? Okay. I do not believe that the developer is planning on installing any equipment, but since it was requested by the planning commission, I believe it will be up to the city to decide what they want to put in that location.
And
So-
then, I guess with a question for the city attorney, is that something that would be covered in our development agreement? I'm not sure if, I don't recall if we've been through that process on.
We haven't for this, unless there's one existing that covers this as well.
This is a brand new development,
We
so
do
no.
not have one, but the park is a reserve that would be owned by the city to whatever extent the city feels appropriate. That's what the plat language.
Okay.
So this is a typical way we do get parks throughout the city. Developers come in, and typically the city will ask for some land set aside for a park, public park, and it's open for the public. And so then since they're giving up a lot or two lots or some lot, then the idea is that it's a city-owned park, and so the city will pay for any kind of improvements there. The other thing that the reason we would want to put them in is because as our city-owned playground equipment, so we wouldn't want the developer to go buy something at Walmart and put in there, and then kids are getting hurt, and it's a liability on us. So we're going to want to make sure that any playground equipment goes in there is a commercial made and has some warranties and stuff. So since this is a new area, new development, a few lots will start going in, houses, budgets as we go forward. We already budget money every year to improve parks, and we're at the point where most of our parks are improved. And so we may budget $5,000 next year for a piece of equipment or something, and then kind of plan to what it would look like. So really, they're just setting aside this lot for the city, and then our Parks Department will kind of work on a layout, what they think would be good. Because there's fall areas and things, so you can only put a certain amount of playground equipment and spacing and such like that. So they'll work on that, and that would be something probably you'll consider for the 2022 budget is, do you want to put something in there? Cost.
Do we have any idea what a typical cost of furnishing a park or improving a park like this would be? I mean, I know it's not like the $1 million deal we're talking about.
Yeah, so I would
Something
think
of that-
we could
on that
probably get a
scale.
pretty nice setup there, and the size of this for 20,000, 30,000 would cover that whole area there with a couple, 3 nice pieces of equipment, commercial grade. Yep.
Would the developer grade that and plant it to grass before we take it over?
Yes, it will be graded as part of the overall lot grading plan, and they are required to seed that following the grading.
Okay, so we don't just have bare dirt sitting there.
Correct.
Is there a special grass they use, or a specific grass they use?
We typically use a blend of fescue and rye. The rye pops up first and allows the fescue to come up and develop.
Would we consider something besides fescue, so that, a warm season grass? We don't have to put in sprinkler systems?
I can certainly talk with our parks director and
Okay.
figure that out.
I know where he's going with that.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll move to accept the dedications within the final plat for Skyview at Block 49 and authorize all required signatures.
I'll second.
I have a first by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch, and being this is an ordinance, it does require a roll call vote. And I will call that roll. Myself, I will vote in affirmative for this. Mr. Elshoff,
Aye.
Dr. Joe Schroeder,
Aye.
Justin Smith,
Aye.
Diane Nguyen,
Aye.
John Welch.
Yes, aye.
Okay, thank you. The vote carries 6-0. Move on to item D. So this is the Rock Springs 4th development, which I think last one. I know there's a Rock Springs 7, but this got delayed for a while. I don't know the logic behind that. That's okay. So the developer of Rock Spring 4 has completed the preliminary and final plat, submitting to the Planning Commission for review. The Planning Commission reviewed the final plat and conducted a public hearing on February 11th, 2021. Planning Commission considered the evidence and found that the plat complied with all provisions and applicable regulations and voted 4-0 to approve the plat without changes. The plat with certain dedications comes to the governing body for final approval, and our city engineer is here to answer questions.
All right, similar to the last plat, this plat also has a space for a park. This is Reserve D, which is kind of on the north side of the property. This park, however, will be owned and maintained by the developer, so it will be a private park for the use of the developer, of the residents within the development. As the 4th portion of Rock Spring, residents of the other Rock Spring developments.
Very good. I'm glad to see that we're getting the parks up in that part of the city, because that
Yes.
has been But there is none out there, right?
Correct. That has been front and center on the planning commission's minds as they are considering each and every development plat that comes through.
That's very good. Great. Thank you. Any discussion concerning this development for Rock Springs 4?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to accept the dedications within the final plat for Rock Springs Fourth and authorize all required signatures.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Elsoff. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, this is also needs a roll call vote, and I will vote. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Jeff Elsoff,
Aye.
Ms. Diane Nguyen,
Aye.
Dr. Joel Schroeder,
Aye.
and Mr. John Welch.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 13, executive session. So I'd like to ask for an executive session for non-elected personnel for 30 minutes and invite the city manager and city attorney. Motion for executive session.
Matters of non-elected personnel. Mayor, I'll make a motion to extend the executive session for an additional 30 minutes with the open meeting resuming at 9:01 PM.
Second.
First and from Mr. Smith and a second from Mr. Elsoff. Any discussion?
I'd rather do 15.
We have a motion and a second. You can insert a substitute motion, or you can address the motion on the floor.
How do I address the motion on the floor?
That would be up to the chairman to.
I'll make a substitute motion that we extend the meeting for 15 minutes. The executive session.
Do we have a second?
Do we have a second for this substitute motion?
Guess not. Everybody thinks we're going to have a long discussion. Yeah, withdraw my motion.
Motion withdrawn. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
4-1.
I'm sorry, 4-1, you're actually right. I wrote it down right, I just said one, but 4-1, and with Mr. Welch voting in the negative. So we are in executive session for an additional 30 minutes. call the meeting back. And, move on to the next item.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure we're back live yet.
Oh, we need to wait to be back live? Okay, let's wait to be back live. Let us know when we are.
Okay, so when the screen is online.
Are we live?
Screen above.
He says we're up. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're held in executive session. No binding action was taken. I'm calling the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is item 14, and we'll talk about the March workshop. So is everyone open for regular scheduled workshop on March 9th at 6:30 PM, which is the regular time? Okay, the topics will be public works with specific discussion surrounding the 2021 street projects, sidewalks, speed limits, and the brush site. Anything else we need to discuss at that meeting? That's going to be a pretty packed meeting, I think. But if you need to add anything, okay. Okay, very good. The next item on the agenda is item 15, adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
A motion from Dr. Schroeder and a second from Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much, and we'll
I'll
take
make a
a
motion that we turn the heat up a little bit in
the
here.
heat up. I thought we got a plenty of heat. This discussion was a lot of fun.
Okay,
That's
that we
entirely
turn
up to somebody who plays the
air
thermostat.
conditioning down.
Somebody plays with the thermostat, please address that, okay? I would like to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll go into land bank meeting.
Maybe you can find the thermostat. Show me the thermostat.
I think it's right there on the wall. Now, I'm not going to play with it because
I don't know if
every
it's
time I
because we didn't have bodies in here or what.